Dun-dun-dun-dun. What? What? Uh, what's the lag on here? I know I'm gonna have some lag. There's always lag. It's weird. Oh man. What a freaking day. What a freaking day. I'm gonna go ahead and slap this up in the corner here. Oh, let's see, how's everybody doing today? Hey, what's up, man? Sorry, like there's always some lag when it goes with this, so like if I don't answer right away, it's because the stream's all laggy and weird. Hey, Marilyn, how's it going? I am just basically keeping myself busy because I was told to stay home because I had a cough and because I was doing. I was just, I don't know. I had like a little fever and everything, so they're like, just go ahead and stay home. I'm pretty good. I feel better. I feel like all my symptoms can be contributed to like just allergies because right now there's just a crazy amount of pollen in the air. But you know, they were like better safe than sorry. Just stay home. See, there's probably got to be a significant amount. I put on ultra low latency, and then it's still just like really like there's a huge delay between what I say or like whenever somebody messages and then whenever I can see it. It's so stupid. But how are y'all doing? How are things going in your parts of the world? That's what I'm curious about. I'm practicing my social distancing. Oh, what a mess. What a mess. What a mess. It's getting pretty bad up there. Yeah, I've heard it's pretty bad for small businesses right now. I know my little online store, like, well, my eBay store or whatever, is just not. I mean, actually, I guess people are stuck at home ordering stuff online, but it's been a problem getting to the post office and stuff, and I can't exactly schedule like pickups and everything. So most of my inventory is just kind of stuck here. 75%. Wow. Yeah, that's a significant amount. That's a lot. What is your little business? Security at 29. Yeah, Canada's probably not so bad right now. They just confirmed I think 5 or 6 cases in the town next door to me. We don't have any here, but I had to quarantine 2 people because I work as the emergency management coordinator. I actually had to quarantine 2 people the other day in my town, which is I have my microphone way over here. Let me move that a little closer. So that's been been pretty crazy around here lately. Do some kind of curious how many there are. This my statistics from like 2 days ago. Oh, coffee shops, yeah. Well, it's just crazy because I love coffee. So me, I'm all for coffee shops. But man, it's hitting everybody's businesses hard right now. It's really bad. Yeah, all the fast food places are closed. I know they they closed basically all the dining rooms, and pretty much shut. I had to shut down our well, there's only one little restaurant in our town, so I had to close the dining room, but I still allowed them to do delivery and takeout and everything, because they were conforming with, like, you know, all the cleaning stuff, and the guy was doing a good job, so let him just go ahead and keep his operation going, but close the dining room. It's just crazy. But yeah, long story short, I had a fever and a cough yesterday morning, and I basically handled a bunch of stuff on just over the phone or whatever. So it told me to stay home today. I'm pretty sure it's just allergies, but here we are. Yeah, it looks like the town next door has 13. Wow, that's more than double than what they had the other day. I'm pretty sure it's just going to be even more. We live in crazy times, people. We live in weird, crazy times. But in better news, nobody thinks I'm crazy for hoarding food and guns and ammo. So, well, even though you have a heart condition, it's a good chance that you know, because you're younger, you'll probably be better off. Oh, they're about to start.
Will want to have what they have to have, what they feel they have to have, and they're also buying in slightly smaller quantities, which is good.
That's not true.
Because we're not going anywhere. We're going to be here. So I want to
thank the internet's just been really goofy lately. I don't know what's going on.
Americans from every walk of life are coming together, and thanks to the spirit of our people, we will win this war. And we're winning, and we're going to win this war. America will triumph, and America will rise higher than ever before. We'll be stronger than ever before, and we've learned a lot. We've learned a lot about.
We've learned that we haven't bought enough food.
Relying on other countries, and I can say that I think in both a very good and a very bad way. Some good things came out of it, and some.
Nobody in the background here is looking happy. They are looking wore out, and I can tell you the last couple days for me working, I've been wore out as well. I work an average of like 10, 12-hour days right now, like back to back to back. And it's just because this whole situation is just ongoing.
Not so good things came out of it. So I'd like to move now to invite our team to provide information on the new measures to prevent viral spread at our borders. And I'll start by asking Secretary of State Pompeo to speak. He's doing a fantastic job, and like everyone else, he's been working very, very long and very, very hard, and he's doing the other more normal jobs of a great Secretary of State. But he got tied into this like everybody else, and he's been really doing a fantastic job. Mike, please.
Damn, those cameras, they're just going off.
Thank you, Mr. President. Before I address the efforts that we've been engaged in to push back against the Chinese virus, I want to assure the American people that, as President Trump just said, your State Department, your entire national security team is
still calling it Chinese virus, huh?
Diplomatic challenges around the world. Those include reducing risk to America from Afghanistan, holding the Iranian regime accountable for its malign activity, and our counterterrorism efforts against ISIS remain a priority for our team. Our number one priority across those mission sets remains the protection of the American people. The President and our team are very focused on it. I'll take this moment, too, to thank my team, State Department team, who is working long hours all around the world to take care of Americans who are stuck at places around the world. I'll talk about that more in just a minute. You've all seen Dr. Birx with me. Germany is actually, my cousins are over in Germany. They're actually recalling their national people, like any of their compatriots, like they're calling them all back home. So I wonder if the U.S. is going to implement something like that too, which I think is weird. I feel like they should almost do like a shelter in place. Like, hey, if you're, but then again, you know, if you're in another country and you don't have a support system or anything like that, you know, how are you going to
support yourself if you're quarantined in a foreign country? Is it that foreign country's responsibility to take you on, or what? This is just really interesting.
State Department officials is doing great work, but I want to give a shout out to all of the State Department team here in Washington and around the world that are working overtime to help us push back against this pandemic. Under the President's leadership this week, we've taken two important steps. First, as President Trump announced on Wednesday, the United States and Canada jointly agreed to restrict all non-essential traffic across our border. This decision goes into effect tonight at midnight. The restrictions will be reviewed after 30 days, and they exclude traffic and movement across the border for work or other essential reasons. We're grateful to have such an outstanding friend to the north who is committed, as we are, to defeating.
Oh, now you're friends with the Canadians. I got you.
This virus. I also want to announce today that the United States and Mexico have agreed to restrict non-essential travel across our shared border. Both our countries know the importance of working together to limit the spread of the virus and ensure that commerce that supports our economy continues to keep flowing. Here too, the United States is glad to have a friend who's working side by side us in the fight.
Because we're already running short on regular stuff. If you shut down the borders, man, that's gonna do a lot of damage.
Secretary Wolf will talk a little bit more about the details of how we're working alongside our partner in Mexico to keep our southern border safe and secure as well. On another note, yesterday the State Department issued a Level 4 global travel advisory. This means that all international travel from U.S. citizens should be avoided. In countries where commercial departure options remain available.
So my cousin was supposed to come visit me next month and basically stay for a while. I don't think he's coming. I don't think he's going to be allowed to even leave the country. Crazy.
U.S. citizens who reside in the United States should arrange for immediate return to the United States unless they're prepared to remain abroad for an extended time. If you choose to travel internationally, your travel plans may well be severely disrupted. And finally, I want to talk about the disinformation that people are seeing, both on Twitter and around the world, some of it coming from government, some of it coming from other individuals. Just urge everyone, as they're seeing information that at one time suggested somehow this virus emanated from the United States Army, this information about lockdowns that are taking place. Every American, indeed, people all around the world, should ensure that where they turn to for information is a reliable source and not a bad actor trying to create and flow information that they know is wrong.
Oh, anybody that's got a bone to pick with the U.S. right now is throwing out just a ton of misinformation because, this is such an opportune moment to try and cause panic inside of a country that you don't like. Like, you could say, man, they're going on lockdown, there's martial law over here, and it's very hard to prove and disprove any of that. So it's going to be really interesting to see what kind of comes of this. I know there's like the government's doing this whole recommend shelter in place, recommend not gathering groups of 10 or more, because it's actually unconstitutional to restrict peaceful gatherings, right? So they're really tiptoeing a lot of this stuff, because if you do implement martial law, boy, there's going to be a lot of very unhappy people. I mean, even if it's done for the right reasons and things like that, that's some really touchy subjects right there.
This is a tough fight. The American people are tougher. Our diplomatic teams are working around the clock to help them keep safe both home and abroad. And we're showing once again the global leadership that America has always delivered. And it's been great to see countries around the world rally behind what President Trump and our team are doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you very much. And we'll take questions right after this. Chad Wolf, yes?
Right behind you. Well, let me start off by thanking the President and the Vice President for their continued leadership.
I gotta say, I like his suit better than just about everybody else's. I mean, she's not wearing a suit, but he's got a good looking suit right there. That's pretty nice. I don't know about that tie. Not a big fan of that. It's really tripping me out with the camera angle.
And commitment for protecting the American people during this crisis. Early on, the President, again, took unprecedented actions to restrict travel from areas affected with the coronavirus. And to date, DHS has screened over 200,000 individuals coming back from those affected countries. This has been an immense undertaking, but one that the men and women of DHS have succeeded.
Nah, they didn't find anything because the people that got tested positive in our area came back from like Barcelona. I think 2 from Barcelona, and then 1 was from like somewhere else. But you know, they probably got screened, or they went through an airport that wasn't screened. So the screening doesn't do jack if you're asymptomatic prior to arrival. So if you don't have a fever, you can still be a carrier, or it can be in your stuff, or yeah, I like how they're social distancing. Okay, it's like, yeah, no, we're all super confident because you know we've been all tested probably every day. They probably get tested every friggin' day.
Successfully accomplished. Today's announcement is yet another example of the extraordinary steps the administration is taking to ensure the safety of the American.
Look, man, this is one thing I don't really like is, you know, I'm not really Republican or Democratic or anything like that, but using this for political gain, I mean, if you listen to what they're saying, it's amazing the steps that this administration is taking. It's amazing, you know, we're doing extraordinary measures. Like, yeah, you're just trying to bump up your reputation, and this is not a time for that. This should just be straight facts, and they should limit that kind of wording, in my opinion, but whatever.
American public. Before I comment on the CDC order that I'm sure Secretary Azar will later elaborate on.
Oh yeah, man, keep going for a drive. Yeah, right now is probably a good time to drive. There's probably not a lot of stuff going on.
As Secretary Pompeo and others have made with our Canadian and Mexican partners regarding cross-border travel. As we continue to evaluate common sense measures that reduce risk and prevent further spread, it only makes sense that we have looked at the measures that our neighbors to the north and south are undertaking. And so we've been working closely with those partners since the earliest days of this virus and the outbreak. And again, as the president said earlier this week, and Secretary Pompeo, we've reached an agreement with both.
Yeah,
Canada
it's
Mexico to
it's a CYA thing. That's what they're doing. It's a CYA, and that's government 101 right there. It was even like that in the Army. It was like, hey, we're going to send you to this mandatory class about suicide. That way, if one of you does kill yourselves, then it's, you know, we can at least say we did everything we could. You know, that kind of junk.
To limit non-essential travel across our land borders. Let me be clear that neither of these agreements with Canada or Mexico applies to lawful trade or commerce. Essential commercial activities will not be impacted. We will continue to maintain a strong and secure economic supply chain across our borders. A few examples of essential travel include, but certainly are not limited to, individuals traveling for medical purposes, to attend educational institutions, for emergency response, public health services.
Yeah, that is cheaper gas. I think over here, I think we're at almost like $1.89 a gallon.
Said the agreements with both Canada and Mexico will go into effect on Saturday, March 21st. Furthermore, we're also working collaboratively with Canada and Mexico to take decisive joint action regarding individuals seeking entry between our ports of entry. The CDC order directs the department to suspend the introduction of all individuals seeking to enter the U.S. without proper travel documentation. That's for both the northern and southern border. The CDC director has determined that the introduction and spread of the coronavirus in the department's border patrol stations and detention facilities presents a serious danger to migrants.
Yeah, is Mike Pompeo back here? Is he all right? Like, oh, just a couple days ago, and that, you know, that whole it's under control thing, and this kind of event is such a fallacy. That's such a it's impossible. I mean, this is like a natural occurring. I can understand if you say like, hey man, we had a hurricane or we had an earthquake, a massive fire, a meteor struck New York or something. Like, you could say, yeah, we have that under control, and that's a relatively true statement. In some kind of biological event like this, you really can't have too much control. That's just nature. You cannot control nature. You can affect the illusion of control. But the fact is, at the end of the day, nature is going to win. You can't control that. So the whole, oh, we have the situation under control is just, no, that's not even a possibility. Well, I'd say in April, you probably have a better chance. The CDC is right now recommending that, or suggesting that this could last as long as 18 months. Personally, I'm going to avoid any hospitals if I can, what I would do is I wouldn't cancel, but I would call them and get their recommendation. I mean, they're hospitals. They are experiencing these kind of things, and I would see what they're. You know what? I'd probably wait till later on. I wouldn't call right away. I'd probably call kind of right before April. Well, shoot, that's coming up, isn't it? Yeah, I'd probably give it another week, and I'd call and be like, "Hey, look, I have this appointment. What's your recommendation?" If it's not like a critical emergency that you go see this doctor, because they're probably gonna be pretty busy, I'd go ahead and just give them a little bit of time.
Our frontline agents and officers and the American people. So it's important to note that the department currently apprehends foreign nationals from over 120 different countries around the world, the vast majority of those having coronavirus cases. Many of these individuals arrive with little or no identity, travel, or medical documentation, making public health risk determination.
You gotta be shitting me. You gotta be shitting me. Like, okay, man, this is not the way things should be going right now. Okay, I just had this talk with somebody the other day. I work in a town that has a lot of undocumented immigrants, you know, illegal aliens, whatever you want to call them. I don't care. There are people here. Sure, they came here illegally, whatever. And I've always told this to the people in my town. If you're not causing any trouble, if you're not selling drugs, you're not robbing people or whatever, and you're just here to provide a better life for your family, I have no problem with that. That is the American way of life right there. But the thing is, if you make these people fear the government, if you make these people fear calling and asking for help, they already don't like to call 911 in an emergency. If they are sick, if they are experiencing symptoms, they are not going to seek help because they're going to worry that they're going to get deported. They're going to be concerned that they're going to be thrown into jail for whatever reason because of their immigration status. This is not a time for that. Once everything goes back to normal, then you can start deporting people left and right. Right now, we need to focus on containing this and making people, like, getting people to be afraid to come forward, you know, is not the way to do that. You're going to just have these clusters of people that are afraid to seek treatment, and it's just going to keep the virus going. I just had this talk the other day, and it just upsets me.
Nations all but impossible. It's also important to note that the outbreak on our southern border would likely increase the strain on health systems in our border communities, taking away important and life-saving resources from American citizens.
Jesus Christ.
Tonight, again at midnight, we will execute the CDC order by immediately returning individuals arriving without documentation to Canada, Mexico, as well as a number of other countries without delay. So again, CBP is positioned to execute. So
we're going to pay for them to leave the country instead of paying to screen them and see what the deal is. God damn it.
Execute these measures as we continue to keep our borders secure and safe. Before I conclude,
the virus does not care about your borders.
Men and women of DHS, specifically CBP, and across the government for the work that they do day in and day out to keep the American people safe from the coronavirus. The department has a number of frontline officers that have tested positive, as well as others who are self-quarantining, and that I am doing everything that I can to protect these patriots as they continue to defend our homeland during this crisis.
Dude, quit using this as a stage. Like, I'm a libertarian. I could really give a crap about government.
The latest in a long line of bold, decisive actions the president has taken to protect Americans from the coronavirus spreading across our borders. In January, within 2 weeks of China's notifying WHO about the virus, and with only 45 cases in China, we began screening travelers from Wuhan. Then, over time, as the outbreak evolved, the president restricted travel from China, Iran, and Europe. Our health experts say that these measures have been truly effective at slowing the virus's spread to our shores. Just think about this. Italy and the United States both saw their first travel-related case of coronavirus around the exact same time, the last week of January. And yet we have had precious time to continue our work around vaccines, therapeutics, and other preparations, while Italy has tragically been overwhelmed with critical patients for several weeks now. The president today is taking action to slow the spread of infectious disease via our border. Under Section 362 of the Public Health Service Act, the CDC is suspending the entry of certain persons into the United States because of the public health threat that their entry into the United States represents. This order applies to persons...
Dude, I don't know. This guy's really sweating back here. Somebody should get him a glass of water or something.
...coming from Mexico and Canada, who are seeking to enter the country illegally and who would normally be held in a congregate setting like a Customs and Border Protection station. It does not apply to U.S. citizens or lawful permanent residents. During this pandemic, a number of health challenges arise when illegal immigrants arrive at our northern and southern borders and are taken into immigration custody. We're talking about significant numbers of illegal immigrants. From this past October through February,
Making this into a
DHS has processed more than 21,000 inadmissible aliens at the northern border and more than 151,000.
We're just turning this into another stage for an immigration debate. That's not
CBP facilities
productive.
were never designed to hold large numbers of people and to protect agents and migrants from infection during a pandemic.
Does anybody remember whenever they were talking about all the people dying of just like the normal flu in these detention centers? Like, I used to work in a state prison. I can tell you, yes, there's cleaning done. Yes, there's maintenance done, but it's usually performed by the inmates who usually don't care. And putting that amount of people in a confined area is going to spread disease so quickly. So you think, like, it's going to be worse with this? The county next door actually just released all their misdemeanor inmates. So anybody that was taken to jail, like on a traffic violation or like a court order, anything that was like a non-violent offense, they just let them go. They were like, get out of here, and we'll worry about your sentencing and stuff like later. Literally, this was happening, gosh, probably about a year ago. They're talking about like, all these people in detention facilities and blah, 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 whatever. But like a while back, they were talking about people dying in these facilities just from like the regular common cold. This situation is going to just make things so much worse.
Nor to treat them for a novel virus if large numbers are infected. When held at border facilities, these migrants risk spreading the virus to other migrants, to CBP agents and border healthcare workers, and even the United States population as a whole. In such circumstances, the kind of social distancing measures the CDC and the President have recommended are simply not possible. On top of that, any resources that we are using to reduce the risk of infection among CBP agents, healthcare workers, and migrants in these facilities are drawing on an American healthcare system that is already fighting the coronavirus pandemic. That's why the President and his administration are taking these important steps to keep Americans and our immigration system safe from these health risks as part of our whole-of-government approach to combating the coronavirus. Thank you, Mr. President, for the work that you've been doing throughout this crisis to slow the spread of the coronavirus and keep our country.
Well, crime is definitely going to go up because a lot of law enforcement agencies are actually restricting person-on-person contact. So, like, they're pulling a lot less people over. They're responding to a lot less calls. They're responding to other calls instead of certain calls. So, I mean, there's less of a law enforcement presence than there was before. And, then you got police officers like me that are probably in quarantine right now. So, there's less going on. So, yeah, it's going to be up to the individual person to really kind of take over their safety and security.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Tony or Deb, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. So we continue to review the data very carefully from around the globe, as I know many of you are. We continue to see signs that, again, individuals under 19 and under may have severe disease, but majority and all have recovered to date. We still see that same trend. And frankly, from Italy, we're seeing another concerning trend, that the mortality in males seems to be twice in every age group of females. This should alert all of us to continue
Oh,
our
great.
vigilance to protect our Americans that are in nursing homes. This requires all of the community, and when you see the sacrifices that many Americans have made, the sacrifices that the service industry has made to close their restaurants, close their bars, and so that the spread is discontinued, and then you really understand how all of Americans must make the same sacrifice. We continue to ask you to follow the presidential guidelines of no groups coming together of more than 10, that if anyone in the household is sick, that everyone quarantines in the household together, and that we continue to focus on those who have the most vulnerability to this illness. Now, to the moms and dads out there that have children with immunodeficiencies or other medical conditions, we don't know the level of risk, and I know you will also protect them in the same way. There just is not enough numbers at this time to really tell them if they're at additional risk or not in the same way that adults are. I don't have any new data. I can see the look on your face of saying, is she seeing something new? I don't have any new data, but I think it's important for us to be as honest with the American people as we can. And when we don't have data, be very clear that we don't know. Finally, no one is immune. I sometimes hear people on radio or others talking about, I'm immune to the virus. We don't know if the contagion levels are different in age groups, but we know it's highly contagious to everyone. Do not interpret mild or moderate disease as lack of contagion.
Yeah,
or
no
that
kidding.
you're
It's easy to
immune.
go to work, yeah, and you're like,
You
oh,
just happen to
I got
have
plenty of money, I'll be
a
fine.
better immune system, and the ability to fight the virus in a way that maybe older people or people with existing medical conditions can't. And that's why it's very important at this moment that all of you carry that message about the sacrifices that many have made, particularly our service providers and our frontline healthcare workers. They are making that sacrifice every day so that every American can move through this well. But we need every American following the presidential guidelines. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Tony, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I just want to underscore a couple of things that
That
I've
dude
said
is
a few
short,
times
man.
to this group. You may recall that just a week ago or so, I said the two pillars, the two elements of our capability to contain the infection and the surge of infections in this country rely on two things: keeping infections from coming from without in. We've been very successful in doing that with China and with Europe. Now we have the northern and southern border issues. There's a fundamental public health reason for doing that, because we cannot be preventing people from coming in from one area when they can actually go into the other. So that's an important reason. Understand that there's a public health reason for doing that. The second thing I think is really important is what happened in New York today, what Governor Cuomo mentioned about an hour ago, some rather strong issues that have been addressed with his recommendations. Not recommendations, essentially orders. Now, we have a group of recommendations and guidelines that are applicable to the entire country. You know them. We've been over them. Yet there are places, regions, states, cities in this country that are being stressed much, much more than the country as a whole. Clearly, one of them was Washington. Another one was California. Governor Newsom made some very important, difficult decisions. Today, Governor Cuomo did the same thing. And I want to say I strongly support what he's doing. And one thing, as a New Yorker myself, for those of you who haven't figured out from my accent that I'm from New York, as a New Yorker, I know what New Yorkers can do. We're tough. I was in New York City on September 11th, 2001. And I know what the New Yorkers can do. So please, cooperate with your governor, cooperate with your mayor. It's very important. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony.
That's great.
Oh, boy.
Thank you, Mr. President. The White House Coronavirus Task Force met this morning. We continue at the President's direction to bring the full resources, not just of the federal government, but in full partnership with our state governments, businesses around America, and a partnership with the American people to respond to the threat of the coronavirus. And I know I can speak
Oh yeah,
on behalf
those
of the
those
President
ships
at
and
the
Mercy and
conference
everything.
tonight.
I've got to see one in person. They're huge. They're massive, massive ships. But the problem is they can't just be deployed within 24 hours. They take quite some time to actually set up. I worked in a field hospital in the Army. I was a medic. I worked in ER and trauma, and those hospitals, we can get the ER functional within 12 to 24 hours, but I'm talking about seeing like the capability of seeing like 6 patients, like a rapid, you know, response. But setting up an entire, I think it's like a 45 bed hospital, that takes probably anywhere from 48 to 72 hours, and that's for a field hospital. If you're wanting to set up a massive one, like especially those ships, I mean, you're talking about like a week or two, you know, just to get, because you not only are you setting up like tents and beds and stuff, but you got to get the medical supply set up, the surgery ward set up, and then the infrastructure, the phone lines, the electrical lines, the wastewater and clean water for sinks and all that stuff. I had to set all that up too. That stuff takes time, and unless you have the infrastructure in place already, which a lot of these places where these things have to be set up don't, then you know it takes time. So I'm really curious to see how they're going to do that and what else they're going to do.
Say how inspired we are by the way the American people and American businesses are coming together to help defeat this virus in our country. Millions of Americans are putting into practice the President's 15-day guidelines, and we encourage everyone, even those that are not in areas with significant outbreak, to review these guidelines over the next week and more and put them into practice, and you'll continue to do your part. Later today, we'll be talking with manufacturers around the country, and the President and I continue to be inspired by the way American industry is stepping forward. We have businesses around the country that are literally volunteering to retrofit plants to help us meet the needs of our healthcare workers and our healthcare system in confronting the coronavirus. As the President mentioned yesterday, following his decision to put FEMA in the lead, the emergency declaration, we actually met with all the nation's governors from the FEMA National Response Coordination Center. The President and I, our entire team at the federal level, couldn't be more grateful for the efforts of all of our governors in implementing the guidance that is being issued, not only from our task force, but also in taking strong measures in their own communities to protect their citizens. We want to urge every American to heed your local authorities, listen to their guidance, and also do your part to slow the spread. We reiterated to all of the governors that the President, by putting FEMA in the lead, will continue to implement a plan that is locally executed, state managed, and federally supported, that puts the health of America first. We have received a report today, as the President mentioned, on our legislative team on Capitol Hill. We're working with Republicans and Democrats at this very hour to pass an economic recovery package that the President described, and we hope to see the Congress act on that early next week. On the subject of supplies, we continue to make steady progress on testing. Thanks to the President's involvement of commercial labs, the public and private partnership, more and more Americans are being tested every single day. And tomorrow, Admiral Gua and FEMA will update the American public on the status of testing and our support of state-based testing efforts that are literally expanding by the hour. On the subject of medical supplies, we continue at the President's direction to pursue every means to expand the supply of personal protective equipment for the extraordinary and courageous healthcare workers that are ministering to the needs of people impacted by the coronavirus. We have a policy of procuring, allocating, as well as conserving the resources that we have in our system. And now that the President worked with the Congress to make industrial masks fully available for hospitals to be able to purchase, to be able to use as protective equipment, we're more encouraged than ever about the availability of those important N95 masks to our healthcare facilities. And over this weekend, we'll be announcing a major procurement from the federal government of N95 masks as well.
Oh, where are you going to get them, though?
We're also encouraged that we're finding new alternatives to increase the supply of ventilators. We've mentioned that we have a federal stockpile, some 20,000 ventilators on standby, but that doesn't count the tens of thousands of ventilators that are in our healthcare system around the country. But the President has challenged us to work to free up other ventilators from other sources around the country. And there are two different ways that we're doing that. Number one, in our recent discussion with anesthesiologists, we've literally identified tens of thousands of existing ventilators that can be retrofitted and converted to be ventilators for people struggling with the coronavirus. But also, on the President's behalf and behalf of all of our task force, we want to continue to urge every American and every American hospital and healthcare facility to postpone any elective medical procedures. This will free up bed space, free up hospital capacity for people that are struggling with the coronavirus, and it'll also free up equipment that our healthcare workers need. It is inspiring that we continue to receive reports that businesses around America are donating N95 masks to their local hospitals. Businesses large and small are donating hundreds, in some cases millions of N95 masks. And I know how grateful the President is, and we all are. And let me close by saying, as all of our experts have said many times, while the threat of
better be getting a tax break.
The average American from the coronavirus remains low. Every American can do your part to reduce the burden on your health, on your family, the burden on our healthcare system, and especially the threat to the most vulnerable among us by putting into practice the President's 15 days to slow the spread. And as the President said at the outset of his remarks, I know that millions of Americans are doing that just now, and the greatness of the American character is shining forth.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you very much. Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
You had a call with Senator Schumer. He says you've now agreed to invoke the Defense Production Act to actually make those medical supplies that hospitals say are in severe shortage. So two questions. Is that what you're doing now?
It is. I did it yesterday. We invoked it, I think, the day before. We signed it the evening of the day before, and invoked it yesterday. We have a lot of people working very hard to do ventilators and various other things. Yes.
So you're using it now to tell businesses that you make ventilators, masks, respirators?
For certain things that we need, including some of the very important emergency. I would say ventilators, probably more masks. To a large extent. We have millions of masks which are coming and which will be distributed to the states. The states are having a hard time getting them.
No shit. I was only able to get 3.
The act is very good for things like this. We have millions of masks that we've ordered. They will be here soon. We're having them shipped directly to states.
So you said you were signing this but not invoking it. This is what you said yesterday, and that you would only do so in a worst case scenario. Yeah. So are we now in a worst case scenario?
We need, no, it's no different other than we need
yes, we are.
That the states are unable to get by themselves. So we're invoking it to use the powers of the federal government to help the states get things that they need, like the masks, like the ventilators. Yes, Steve?
Governor Cuomo has done in New York, is there any more consideration to a national lockdown to keep people in their homes?
I don't think so. Essentially, you've done that in California, you've done that in New York. Those are really 2 hotbeds. Those are probably the 2 hottest of them all in terms of hotspots. I don't think so, because you go out to the Midwest, you go out to other locations, and they're watching it on television, but they don't have the same problems. They don't have, by any means, the same problem. New York, California, Miami, the governor's doing an excellent job. Governor DeSantis in Florida. We have some pretty hot spots in Florida too, but we're and the state of Washington, of course. But that was largely, if you look at it, it was one nursing home that had problems like you wouldn't believe. So no, we're working with the governors, and I don't think we'll ever find that necessary.
We're about a week into your 15-day guidelines. Are you happy with the progress? Would you like to see?
I am happy. I am happy with it. We'll have to see what the results are at the end of 14 days. Let's say we'll know by the 15th.
Gosh, this is like one of the most interesting things. Not this particular news conference, but this whole situation is probably one of the most interesting things I've ever really paid attention to.
And we're working out a tremendous financial package for them so they don't work. Who ever heard of this? Usually you work out a financial package to get people working. We're asking people not to work. Social distancing, a new term.
Yeah, everybody's got problems. It's not just the big cities. So, like even out here in the middle of nowhere, we got problems. We got problems and no resources.
Yes, John.
Mr. President, a question for you and a question for Dr. Fauci, if I could. There's been some concern among Democrats on Capitol Hill that the Phase 3 fiscal stimulus is weighted too much in favor of corporations and not enough in terms of individuals. What did your conversations with Senator Schumer yield on that front?
Well, I think that really all of that is being discussed right now. We talked about, as an example, buybacks, stock buybacks. I don't want to have stock buybacks. I don't want people.
Well, I
spending-
mean, as
want
much
some
as I
executives to buy
recommend
200.
responsible firearm ownership and everything, I think food is probably more of a priority in something like this, because if you do get quarantined for 2 weeks and you don't have any way for anybody to bring you any food or anything like that, that's going to help you out a lot more than a gun is. As far as picking a decent firearm, I honestly recommend a Ruger 10/22. It's a nice 22 caliber little rifle. The ammunition, you can buy it like 500 rounds at a time. It's very cheap. It's lightweight. It's accurate. Low recoil. You can hunt small game with it, and you can use it for self-defense. As far as like a pistol goes, for me, a Glock 19 or a Glock 17, anything really a 9mm, something durable, reliable, something that's easy to repair, doesn't require a lot of repairs. That's kind of something I go with. And 9mm is so plentiful that most of the time you can just get that just about anywhere.
100,000 shares of stock. I want that money to be used for the workers and also for the company, to keep the company going, but not for buybacks. I would, I haven't spoken to a lot of the Republicans or Democrats on it. We discussed it, and I don't like buybacks. I didn't like them the first time.
Are you and Senator Schumer?
So we're
on the same
discussing.
page?
We're discussing that. We're discussing many things.
Are you on the same page with Senator Schumer?
We're not so far away. I'll tell you, we're not very far away.
And to Dr. Fauci, if I could. Dr. Fauci, as was explained yesterday, there has been some promise with hydroxychloroquine, this potential therapy for people who are infected with coronavirus. Is there any evidence to suggest that, as with malaria, it might be used as a prophylaxis against COVID-19?
No, the answer is no, and the evidence that you're talking about, John, is anecdotal evidence. So as the commissioner of FDA and the president mentioned yesterday, we're trying to strike a balance between making something with a potential of an effect to the American people available at the same time that we do it under the auspices of a protocol that would give us information to determine if it's truly safe and truly effective. But the information that you're referring to specifically is anecdotal. It was not done in a controlled clinical trial, so you really can't make any definitive statement about it.
Mr. President, on those therapies?
I think I'm, without seeing too much, I'm probably more of a fan of that than maybe than anybody. But I'm a big fan, and we'll see what happens. And
fan of what?
We all understand what the doctor said is 100% correct. It's early, but we've, I've seen things that are impressive, and we'll see. We're going to know soon. We're going to know soon, including safety. But when you get that safety, this has been prescribed for many years for people to combat malaria, which was a big problem, and it's very effective. It's a strong drug. So we'll see.
Fairly effective against SARS.
It was as I understand that, is that a correct statement? It was fairly effective on SARS.
John, you've got to be careful when you say fairly effective. It was never done in a clinical trial. They compared it to anything. It was given to individuals and felt that maybe it worked. So
was there anything to compare it to?
Well, that's the point. Whenever you do a clinical trial, you do standard of care versus standard of care plus the agent you're evaluating. That's the reason why we showed back in Ebola why particular interventions worked.
Sir, on that topic, Mr. President, about the possible therapies, yesterday, Mr. President, you said that they were for, quote, immediate delivery. Immediate, we heard from
we're ordering, yes, we have millions of units ordered. Bayer is one of the companies, as you know, big company, very big, very great company. Millions of units are ordered, and we're going to see what happens. We're going to be talking to the governors about it, and the FDA is working on it right now. The advantage is that it has been prescribed for a totally different problem, but it has been described for many years, and everybody knows the levels of the negatives and the positives. But I will say that I am a man that comes from a very positive school when it comes to, in particular, one of these drugs. And we'll see how it works out, Peter. I'm not saying it will, but I think that people may be surprised. By the way, that would be a game changer. But we're going to know very soon. But we have ordered millions of units. It's being ordered from Bayer, and there is another couple of companies also that do it.
For clarity, Dr. Fauci said there is no magic drug for coronavirus right now, which
Hell
you would
no.
agree. I guess on this issue,
Well,
then,
I think we only
is it
disagree a
possible
little
that-
bit.
Sorry.
I disagree. Maybe and maybe not. Maybe there is, maybe there isn't. We have to see. We're going to know.
Is it
We're gonna
possible?
know.
Is it possible that your impulse to put a positive spin on things may be giving Americans a false sense of hope?
No, I
and
don't think so.
misrepresenting
I
the
don't think
preparedness
so.
right now?
No, I don't think so. I think that, I think it's got, no, I know.
The not yet approved drug.
Such a lovely question.
Interesting. It's like they're arguing. I love it.
And I agree with the doctor, what he said. May work, may not work. I feel good about it. That's all it is, just a feeling. I'm a smart guy. I feel good about it. And we're gonna
Smart
see,
guy,
we're
I
gonna see
feel
soon
good
enough.
about.
And
Holy
we have
shit.
certainly some very big samples of people. If you look at the people, you have a lot of people that are in big trouble. And this is not a drug that obviously, I think I can speak from a lot of experience because it's been out there for over 20 years. So it's not a drug that you have a huge amount of danger with. It's not
Interesting
like a
to see
brand
how
new
the government's
drug
handling
that's
this.
been just created
This is
that
why
may
I'm a huge advocate of individual preparedness. Whether it be MREs, whether it be kind of like me, I'm working on my garden. And, before all this stuff went down, I was considering a fairly small garden, something just respectable and small. But at this point, I'm looking at expanding my garden and using it to supplement the food that we can get a hold of, or the food we already have, to kind of prolong our supplies, because this is going to go on for a little bit. So, I mean, it kind of goes back to, I've brought it up before with family members and everything. In World War II, they had victory gardens, right? You could grow extra food because a lot of the food and all the other supplies were going towards the war effort. So you can really help yourself and help everyone else around you by becoming more independent. I got chickens for egg laying. I have, these plants that I'm growing in my on my property. I'm blessed to have enough property, and that's what I'm continuing to do. Now, my chickens that I do have, they're supposed to lay anywhere from 200 to 300 eggs a year. So, I mean, it's not, if you have one chicken, that's kind of not exactly, at their max capacity, that's not even one egg a day. But I have 6, and eventually, once the area that I have the chickens in, once I have that more built up, we'll be expanding that. I'm trying to get between 14 and 16 chickens eventually. So that will be enough to supply myself and my extended family with a pretty decent supply of eggs. Because right now in this area, I can't even get eggs. They're completely sold out, and as soon as they hit the shelves, they're gone. But I will have my own supply, and, that's something I'm going to use, obviously. So I'm working my way. I was already doing this before all this hit, but now I'm kind of really expediting my plans, and I'm focusing a lot more of my income and stuff towards these things, because later on, it's if I can't get a hold of stuff, at least I will have the capability to grow them,
Unbelievable monumental effect, like kill you. We're going to know very soon. And I can tell you, the FDA is working very hard to get it out. Right now, in terms of malaria, if you want it, you can have a prescription. You get a prescription. And by the way, and it's very effective. It works. I have a feeling you may, and I'm not being overly optimistic or pessimistic. I sure as hell think we ought to give it a try. I mean, there's been some interesting things happened, and some good, very good things.
Interesting.
Let's see what happens. We have nothing to lose. You know the expression? What the hell do you have to lose? Okay?
So what do you say to Americans who are nearly 200 dead? What do you say to Americans who are scared, though? I guess nearly 200 dead, 14,000 who are sick, millions, as you witnessed, who are scared right now. What do you say to Americans who are watching you right now who are scared?
I say that you're a terrible reporter. That's what I say.
Holy shit.
Go ahead.
Holy shit. Oh my God. Hold up. Wait a minute.
Big samples of people. If you look at the people, You have a lot of people that are in big trouble. And this is not a that do it. Companies, as you know, big company, very big, very great company. By the way, that would be a game changer. But we're going to know very soon. But we have ordered millions of units. It's being ordered from Bayer. It's got
the not yet approved drug.
Such a lovely question. Look, it may work and it may not work. And I agree with the doctor, what he said. May work, may not work. I feel good about it. That's all it is, just a feeling. I give it a try. I mean, there's been some interesting things happened and some good, very good things. Let's see what happens. We have nothing to lose. You know the expression? What the hell do you have to lose? Okay?
So what do you say to Americans? Sir, nearly 200. I'll just follow up.
John,
Nearly 200 dead. What do you say the Americans who are scared, though? I guess nearly 200 dead, 14,000 who are sick, millions, as you witnessed, who are scared right now. What do you say to Americans who are watching you right now who are scared?
I say that you're a terrible reporter.
Holy cow. I'm not going to say I wasn't expecting something like that out of his mouth, but something you should have said right then is, hey, you know, we're doing all we can. Everybody needs to do their part. We all need to stay calm and we need to work together. But instead he's like, nah, you're just a shit reporter. I'm like, what? What?
Who are watching you right now who are scared?
I say that you're a terrible reporter. That's what I say. Go ahead. I think it's a very nasty question, and I think it's a very bad signal that you're putting out to the American people. The American people are looking for answers, and they're looking for hope. And you're doing sensationalism, and the same with NBC and Comcast.
That's a valid question.
I don't call it Comcast, I call it Concast. Let me just, for whom you work, let me just tell you something. That's really bad reporting. And you ought to get back to reporting instead of sensationalism. Let's see if it works. It might and it might not.
Dude, the cameras are going nuts right now. I don't know if you can hear those shutter clicks, but holy hell.
Let's see what happens, John.
Can I get back to the science and the logistics?
You ought to be ashamed of yourself.
The
Holy
units that
shit.
were ordered, are they for clinical trials or are they for distribution to the general patient population?
We are going to, as I understand it, we are going to be taking samples in New York. Governor Cuomo very much is interested in this drug.
How can everybody behind him keep a straight face? I don't want to play poker with them, man.
We're waiting for one final approval from the FDA. We'll see what happens. But we'll use it on people that are not doing great, or even at the beginning of not feeling well.
Sort of fall under the.
And John, what do we have to lose?
So this would sort of.
Wait, John, it's been out there for so long. We hear good things. Let's see. Maybe it works and maybe it doesn't.
I understand all that. I'm just thinking of the application here. So that would be under sort of a modified compassionate access.
We're doing that, I guess, and that's what it's called. Yeah. Yes.
I would like Dr. Fauci, if you don't mind, to follow up on what the president is saying. Should Americans have hope in this drug right now? And sir, I would like to follow up on Peter's question here. Could you please address Americans in this country who are scared right now? This is a very valid concern that people have.
No, there really isn't that much of a difference in many respects with what we're saying.
Oh my gosh.
The president feels optimistic about something, his feeling about it. What I'm saying is that it might be effective. I'm not saying that it isn't. It might be effective, but as a scientist, as we're getting it out there, we need to do it in a way as while we are making it available for people who might want the hope that it might work, you're also collecting data that will ultimately show that it is truly effective and safe under the conditions of COVID-19. So there really isn't different. It's just a question of how one feels about it.
Is there any reason to believe it's not safe?
Well, certainly as a drug, any drug, John, has some toxicities. The decades of experience that we have with this drug indicate that the toxicities are rare and they are, in many respects, reversible. What we don't know is when you put it in the context of another disease, whether it's safe. Fundamentally, I think it probably is going to be safe. But I like to prove things first. So it really is a question of not a lot of difference. It's the hope that it will work versus proving that it will work. So I don't see big differences here.
I agree.
Sir, your message to Americans who are working at home, who have their children in their homes right now, who are homeschooling, doctors who say they don't have the masks they need to do their jobs, your message to them?
My message to the American people is that there is a very low incidence of death. You understand that. And we're going to come through this stronger than ever before. If you get it, if you happen to get it, it is highly unlikely. It's looking like it's getting to a number that's much smaller than people originally thought.
Jesus.
In terms of the ultimate.
It's not super comforting, guy.
Which would be death. My message to the American people is, number one, you've done an incredible job. Incredible what you've gone through.
That's what he should have said to the other dude instead of telling him he's a shit reporter and he should be ashamed of himself.
40 other countries where this has happened. And there is tremendous hope. And I think we're going to come out stronger, better, bigger in every way. I think we're going to be a better country than we were before. And we learned a lot. We learned on reliance, who to rely on, who not to rely on. But our country has been incredible, the way they pulled together, including the fact that I just spoke to Senator Schumer. We had a wonderful conversation. We both want to get to a good solution. But it's been really, for me, watching and seeing people that weren't speaking, getting along well, because we all have one common aim, and that's to get rid of this invisible enemy.
Get over your stuff and just get the job done. I'm dealing with the same stuff in my town.
Maybe even better. Yeah, please, in the back. No, in the back, please.
Mr. President, I have two questions, if you'll indulge me. The first question is, many small businesses are concerned that they have weeks, not months, and are worried about how long it'll take.
We're going to be helping them a lot. We're going to be focused, a big focus, and including my conversation with both Mitch and with Chuck, a big focus of that conversation with small businesses, because they are really the engine behind our country, more so than the big ones. They are the engine behind our country.
Second, if I may, sir, are you concerned about members of Congress that may have used information they learned on updates to sell stocks and profit off of this?
I'm not aware of it. I saw some names. I know all of them. I know everyone mentioned Dianne Feinstein, I guess, and a couple of others.
Yeah, let's throw some people under the bus real quick.
But I find them to all be very honorable people. That's all I know. And they said they did nothing wrong.
Yeah, it's one way to save money, right?
Group, very honorable people. Yeah, please.
Mr. President, so the whole group would include Richard Burr, the head of the Intelligence Committee, and it also would include Senator Kelly Loeffler. And so the question is whether or not they should be investigated for that behavior.
Well, it also includes Dianne Feinstein, a Democrat. You didn't mention her name. Why didn't you mention her name? And I think she's a very honorable person, by the way. So I'm not saying, but you know, it's interesting that you mentioned two people, but you don't mention one that happens to be a Democrat.
Any senator, should they be
I don't know, because I'd have to look at it, possibly, but I find them to be honorable people. Yeah.
Politicians, honorable people. Okay, gotcha.
Wartime president right now, leading the country through this pandemic that we're experiencing. Do you really think, going off on Peter, going off on a network is appropriate when the country is going through something like this?
I do, because I think Peter is, I've dealt with Peter for a long time. And I think Peter is not a good journalist when it comes to fairness.
But he's asking for your message to the country.
Oh, I think it's a good message, because I think that the country
You didn't give me
has to understand that there is indeed, whether we like it or not, and some of the people in this room won't like it, there's a lot of really great news and great journalism, and there's a lot of fake news out there. And I hear it all, and I see it all, and I understand it all, because
this is so insane. This is like some alternate reality shit. I just really can't believe this
stuff. I know it's
stuff.
fake. And when they say they have 15 sources have said, and I know there's no sources. There's no sources. They just make it
none
up.
of that was even
I know
brought
that,
up.
and I call Peter out, but I call other people out too. And this
Holy
is
hell.
time to come together. But coming together is much harder when we have dishonest journalists. It's a very important profession that you're in. It's a profession that I think is incredible. I cherish it. But when people are dishonest, they truly do hurt our country. Yeah, in the back. Please, go ahead.
Mr. President, China has been in communication with the United States and also WHO about coronavirus.
Right, that's true.
He's like, deport her.
The U.S. shut its border to travelers from China on February the 2nd. Also, Wuhan has been in lockdown since January the 24th. And this all happened almost 2 months ago. Why did you still say if you could have known it earlier? And also, you have been calling coronavirus.
Well, I have to say this. We have, and I can speak for myself, but I have a very good relationship with China and with President Xi. I have great respect for President Xi. I consider him to be a friend of mine. It's unfortunate that this got out of control. It came from China. It got out of control. Some people are upset. I know President Xi. He loves China. He respects the United States. And I have to say, I respect China greatly, and I respect President Xi. Okay?
Can I ask more about stock buybacks? Many of the airlines and Boeing did stock buybacks. Is this a deal breaker for you in this?
No, but I never liked stock buybacks from their standpoint. When we did a big tax cut, and when they took the money and did buybacks, that's not building a hangar, that's not buying aircraft, that's not doing the kind of things that I want them to do. And we're now talking about buybacks. We didn't think we would have had to restrict it because we thought they would have known better. But they didn't know better. In some cases, not in all cases, obviously. Some people did an incredible job. They built plants all over the country. I mean, you'd see what's happened. I mean, we were doing, until this invisible enemy appeared, we never had an economy like this. But there were some companies that used that money to buy back stock, driving up the price of the stock artificially in many cases. I don't like that. I don't like it. And as far as whether or not we'll have that, allow them, when we give them money, because we have to keep these great companies in business because of the workers, frankly, for the most part, because of the workers. The workers are my number 1 concern. But the way we take care of the workers is we have to keep the companies going.
But if they can't go to work, there's no point in keeping the companies going. I mean, that's kind of the whole deal here.
Stock buybacks. I don't want them taking hundreds of millions of dollars and buying back their stock, because that does nothing. Yeah, please.
Thank you very much. One for Dr. Fauci, and then hopefully one for you.
Sure. And one thing, Secretary of State Pompeo is extremely busy, so if you have any question for him right now, could you do that?
Busy? He's just standing back there sweating.
I'd like him to go back to the State Department, or as they call it, the Deep State Department, if you don't mind. I'd like to have him go back and do his job. So does anybody have any question? Please.
Mr. Secretary, can I ask you?
You want to call somebody?
Yeah, how about you? Only for the Secretary.
The exemptions on work travel, can you define that? Is all work, anyone with a work visa can still cross the border? Can you define what, like the measures that you're taking?
It's a great question. We're working, we're very real concerned about H-2A visas, in particular agricultural workers need to get across. We're going to make sure that we do everything we can to keep that part of our economic lifeblood working between our two countries. DHS and the State Department will work together. We want to make sure and keep commerce between Canada, the United States, and Mexico alive, functional, and prepared for the day that this economy bounces back like we expected it will.
Mr. Secretary, the Mexican government has not announced any travel ban on Europe. Where have you been in touch with them as to when they're going to do this and what it is that they're telling you? And then a second question, they also are telling us and said in a press conference this morning that they will not take back any non-Mexican citizen. Any other third parties will have to, we don't know what will happen to them. So can you address what will happen to those third country immigrants that you are saying that will not be allowed to enter the U.S. and Mexico is saying
so crazy to watch,
not be allowed to
honestly.
stay in Mexico either or sent back from the U.S.?
If I may, I'll take the first one and then Chad, I'll give you the second one. With respect to travel into Mexico from outside, I spoke with Foreign Minister Ebrard a couple of times about this. I'm very confident we're going to get to a really good place that protects the Mexican people and the American people from those who might be traveling into places where we've got designations, the Schengen zone from China, so that they're not coming into Mexico and then coming into the United States. I'm very confident we'll do that, and we'll make that announcement shortly together.
And again, as we implement the CDC's order, again, we're going to take a number of individuals that cross the border illegally and repatriate them or remove them quickly back to Mexico, back to the Northern Triangle, and back to any other country. So we're going to do that in a rapid fashion. We'll continue to work with Mexico to make sure that Mexican nationals go back as well as other populations.
But are you sending Guatemalans back to Guatemala or Cubans back to Cuba? What would you do with those third countries that are not Mexicans?
So we're doing all of the above. We're going to be sending, again, individuals back to Mexico, individuals back to the Northern Triangle countries, Cuba, Haiti, all of the, again, 122 different nations that we see nationalities that come across that border. We'll be sending them back individually to their countries, but also working with Mexico to send additional populations back there as well.
And just to put it, when you said before, you said the non-Mexicans going to Mexico. We're not sending them to Mexico. We're sending them back to their own countries, not to Mexico. Why would Mexico take people that aren't from Mexico? We're sending them back, in the case of Guatemala, Honduras, El Salvador, a lot of other countries, they go back to the country from where they came. Okay, and Mike, please.
Secretary Pompeo, on the issue of disinformation, is there any particular locus for this disinformation, or is it diffused?
It's pretty diffused, unfortunately, but we've certainly seen it come from places like China and Russia and Iran, where there are coordinated efforts to disparage what America is doing in an activity to do all the things that President Trump has set in motion here.
Other than what you're doing this morning, what are you doing to fight back?
Lots of things, lots of work. One of the things we want to make sure is the American people go to trusted sources for that information. But we've made clear, we've spoken to these countries directly that that they need to knock it off, that we don't approve of it. And then there are a handful of other things we're engaged in to make sure that the right
Cut it out,
information out there
guys.
and
Just
accurate
cut it out.
information
You know,
is
that's
given.
really,
This
really
idea,
bad taste right here.
Of transparency and accurate information is very important. It's how we protect American people from something like this ever happening again.
Mr. Secretary,
You
the Peace Corps volunteers.
want the American people to be coming to trusted sources of information. Does it undermine you at all when the president stands up here and he attacks news outlets calling us untrustworthy?
Somebody else have a question?
The Peace Corps volunteers the Peace Corps volunteers.
Secretary.
Please.
You're another
Find
one.
themselves stranded in places where there are no longer flights to get back to the United States. What efforts are being made to help them?
I appreciate that question. So we're doing lots of things. We've had a couple places in particular, Peru and Morocco. I think we've had the first 2, maybe 3 now flights out of Morocco. We're going to work to get people back. We're urging individuals when they can get back on their own. They traveled there on their own. When they can get back there on their own, they ought to try to do that. But we have a team stood up at the State Department, the Repatriation Task Force, that is working each of these instances. So we've heard from individuals, members of Congress. We're trying to get Americans back from these places where air travel has been disrupted. And we'll get that done over time. We'll get it done
Do
successfully.
you have any sense of how big that problem is? Is there any sense of just how big that problem is? How many
We
people?
we don't know the full scale of it yet, but we think we have the largest number identified, and we're working. If there are those who are watching that are someplace, and you can go on the State Department website. You can log into, I think it's step.gov. You can go to STEP and log in, and we'll track it, and we'll try to get everybody back just as best we can.
Secretary, how long are these border restrictions likely to last along the south and north borders?
Well, they'll last as long as we need to do it to protect the American people from the virus. I couldn't tell you how long it's going to last.
We have you determined whether Iran is responsible for that rocket attack last week?
So
Maybe we shouldn't say that.
So let me just get back to you on the answer to that. And what we can say with certainty is this: we've made clear all along that the Iraqi Shia militias are funded, trained, equipped by the Iranians, and we've urged the Iranians not to do that, and we've told the Iranians that they will be held responsible for those attacks when they threaten American lives.
The Peace Corps volunteers that are in 60+ countries, have they all been returned?
I don't know if they're all back or not yet. I know that they were directed to come back. I know that most of them are back. I couldn't tell you if we have all of them back yet.
And then Secretary Esper's not here, but to get tests to the troops in Iraq and Afghanistan, are you able to give us a progress report on the status of that, if they're all able to get tests?
I don't know the answer to that. I know we have State Department officials, too, who are concerned, want to make sure we get them tests, our team as well, and we're working on that. We've had significant success on that to date. There are a few places we've not been able to get them, but we will. We'll get them there.
How exactly are you going to get those Americans back, and do you have any plans to get the military involved in that?
We're going to use all the tools we can. These first efforts are combined commercial, private flights that will fly in, bring them back to a destination here in the United States. So we'll do that. There are some that will travel back other ways as well. And we've worked with the Department of Defense to say where there is space available, we'll be able to bring them back on those flights as well. It's a whole government effort to make sure we get them back. They're gonna help us every place they can. Secretary Nesper, I've talked about it a couple times.
Thank you, Secretary. Question on Iran again. Is there any consideration to relaxing sanctions on Iran during the coronavirus crisis, as they've been particularly hard hit?
That's an important question. The whole world should know that humanitarian assistance into Iran is wide open. It's not sanctioned. We've offered to provide assistance to the Iranians as well. I talked with Dr. Tedros from the World Health Organization about this. We're doing everything we can to facilitate both the humanitarian assistance moving in and to make sure that financial transactions connected to that can take place as well. There is no sanction on medicines going to Iran. There's no sanctions on humanitarian assistance going into that country. They've got a terrible problem there, and we want that humanitarian medical healthcare assistance to get to the people of Iran.
But the sanctions themselves, no movement.
We are working to do all the things we've had in place for the first 3 years here to deliver security for the American people.
They know the answer. Iran, they know the answer. Iran, the leaders, they know the answer to your question.
Was it appropriate for the president to call your department the Deep State Department?
at a time when thousands of diplomats are working very hard around the world to combat this pandemic?
Worked with the president for 3 years now. I know how much he values the people that work on my team. I know when I was the director of the Central Intelligence Agency how much he valued the work we did. I know that he watches our team, Dr. Birx, all the team that's working to push back against this virus, to keep America safe. I know how much he values them.
What a good answer. Yes, go ahead.
Mr. President,
Can I ask a question?
Mr. President,
Very true, too. Go ahead.
Mr. President,
No, behind you.
I apologize.
Please, go ahead.
the news, I have two questions. The first is to Secretary Pompeo. The news hours learned that the CDC picked up that there was some sort of virus happening in Wuhan, the coronavirus happening in Wuhan as early as December. When did the CDC start letting other agencies know that there was something in China happening, that this coronavirus was happening? And then when did the whole government approach start to happen?
So I'll let the CDC or Dr. Fauci, you want to talk to that? Dr. Secretary Azar, please. Yeah.
Yeah, so we were alerted by some discussions that Dr. Redfield, the director of the CDC, had with Chinese colleagues on January 3rd. It's since been known that there may have been cases in December, not that we were alerted in December.
Then, Mr. President, the other question I have for you.
Excuse me, we'll do it in a second. Let Mike, he has to go
May I just have
Has to
one more
go back
thing?
to work.
There's been some discussion about China and what they knew and when they knew it. And I've been very critical. We need to know immediately. The world is entitled to know. The Chinese government was the first to know of this risk to the world. And that puts a special obligation to make sure that data gets to our scientists, our professionals. This is not about retribution. This matters going forward. We're in a live exercise here to get this right. We need to make sure that even today, the data sets that are available to every country, including data